the nature of universals. Um, Universals are really just the categories. Do they physically exist as a category, or only as individuals that we basically assume are in a particular category? In other words, are you Aristotelian or are you a Platonist, pretty much? And he was an Aristotelian, and a good one, and everyone found him very popular. And by the way, you find that he also sings. So a lot of the times he was teaching, he was also singing. But it was expensive even then to live in Paris, and the baron of one of the castles invited him to live in his castle, for free. He could have room and board, and all he needed to do was instruct the baron's ward, who was Heloise. So he began to instruct Heloise for free room and board. They fell in love, obviously, and she ended up having a child. The baron was furious, wanted him to marry her, but if he married her, he wouldn't be able to stay as a teacher. He had no other skills as far as he thought, so he refused. And as a result, the baron was furious enough that he sent 4 individuals to Abelard's room, who still lived in the castle, and they removed a particular item from Abelard's body. And as a result, Abelard not only was in pain, but decided that maybe he would become a monk after all, and he told Heloise to go and move into a convent. Remember, though, she was pregnant, so first she went to England, where she gave birth to a son, and they named the boy Astrolabe. Astrolabe is a mathematical instrument that you can use in order to try to figure out where you are on the ocean when you're on a ship. So they named him a scientific instrument. It's pretty weird, right? But in any case, then after giving birth to the child, she went and moved into a convent, and he ended up moving into a monastery that was co-located with that convent. But for a long time, they communicated via letters, and the letters are in the library, so you can go read them. And the neat thing about it is it gives you a good idea of what life was like in Normandy at that time of the Middle Ages. And it doesn't actually look too bad, actually. So they're considered, by the way, a pair of the star-crossed lovers. Have you heard of the star-crossed lovers? One of the other quiz questions I often would ask is, what star-crossed lovers are you familiar with? Right? There's Isolde and Tristan, right? Tristan and Isolde, Romeo and Juliet. Everybody knows Romeo and Juliet. What other ones? I mean, there's tons of them out there. So Abelard and Heloise, that's one. Another is Hildegard of Bingen. Who's famous, and you might have listened to some of her music. In fact, we can play some of her music while we're.
Many veterans like me choose not to register with a political party. That's why I'm voting.
It sounds a lot like Gregorian chant. The main difference is it's written for women's voices. Because, of course, Hildegard, at about 4 years of age, ended up becoming she had visions. And so her mom took her to the bishop, and the bishop decided, yes, she has visions, and they were considered to be really visions of the Blessed Mother. And so that meant she needed to become a nun, so they moved her into the convent, where she was put into a hellacious, bricked up room with only a small window that she and the one other girl that was confined in the same room could look out, and where they would give them food during the day. And the only thing they could see out that window were the nuns in the chapel, where they would sing songs. Eventually she became a novitiate, became a nun, and then eventually the head of
I'm
the
Mary
convent.
Peltola, and I approve this message.
Nick Baggage only looks out for himself. First, he hired workers in India.
So it's considered beautiful. They're all songs about Mary. And so if you're interested, some of her songs have been quite a bit updated, so you could actually hear musical instruments. She did not include musical instruments, as far as I know. It was just for the nuns to sing. And there are movies. If you're interested in looking, there's at least a new one, which is pretty horrible, actually, because life, even though they thought it was okay,
We should have the freedom to vote. for
it
all.
sounds pretty bad to us.
Vote no on ballot measure 2.
Paid for by no one to the top 3 contributors.
These are going to stop once it's November, right?
See in Final Five Fund.
I think the movie's in German, but do we need a trigger warning?
Exorcise the most vile spirit. The very embodiment of our enemy, the entire spectre of the whole legion. To get out!
I'll try to find. Oh, well, I'll just skip it. You get the idea. Beautiful movie. Right up there with, Conan the Barbarian, the musical, I guess. What else? Abelard, Heloise. Oh, St. Francis. Let me do St. Francis. Another excellent example. And this one, oh my goodness, that's the whole thing? Let's just do a scene.
He came from a place where wealth was sacred. He lived in a town where the families were living. What's the serious business? Yes. What is business? I think people's feet burn with the Lord. And in his innocence, he made a world where only truth was sacred, and only lust was holy.
Dumb bird.
greater love.
People say you're mad. Do you know that?
That's Sister Claire.
I think you're back before.
We get Eau Claire.
I want to share my joy with you. Our treasures are in heaven, Father, not here on earth. Don't be a slave to these. Throw it all away. You understand that Holy Mother Church must punish those who subvert the established order. A man such as you is either criminal or someone seeking the light. Father, I give you back everything that belongs to you. Your clothes, your possessions, your name too.
His was the strength to build this world, and his was the courage to live in it. Now, Franco Zeffirelli has made his first film since Romeo and Juliet. A story of this time and our time. A motion picture that unites us all. Obsession with
Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's the Pope.
original innocence. Brother, son, sister, moon.
The geese are really funny because they sing along with. So Saint Francis, he's the one who begins the Franciscan order, and even Pope Francis named himself at least partially in honor of this Saint Francis. By the way, if you read up on the actual life of Saint Francis, it's horrible. Basically starved himself to death, practically. He famously had the signs of the cross that occurred on him. You know, the holes in the hands and the feet, and I think other marks as well, just from his prayers and so on. But he started a monastery, and that monastery grew, and it became one of the largest orders. So another example of an interesting life. He did go on the Crusades, one of the Crusades, and he was there not as a knight, but instead as a monk. And he went to the camp of the Saracens, or the enemy, and spent time talking to them about their belief in God and so on. And the famous prayer that he is known for, let me be what? Let me be a what of your peace? A channel of your peace. It's actually from an Islamic prayer. I mean, he adapted it. So it's, you know, he was trying to make peace instead of having the fighting continue. Failed miserably, by the way, but nonetheless, he was there and had that attempt to make peace there. So, what I'm basically trying to say is that the Middle Ages wasn't a dark age. There was actually a lot of things that developed, especially in logic. The logic schools really advanced quite a lot. So once the works of Aristotle were once again reintroduced into Western European thinking, it would come in either through the universities in Spain, which were very popular. A lot of Christians would come down to study there before going back up, but also was introduced through the Crusades. So as the individuals like St. Francis and others were involved in the Crusades, they became associated with the scholars that were in the Middle East. In fact, one of the scholars that I already mentioned just briefly, but is Moses ben Maimon, otherwise known as Maimonides. And Maimonides wrote a book too. He wrote other books, but the book that especially influenced the Christians in Europe was the Guide to the Perplexed. And basically his advice is, what should you teach people that really don't need to study it? You don't have to teach them the difficult things because they don't need it. So just basically ignore that. Don't teach them the things that are perplexing to them. But of course, if you're going to study theology and everything, and he did. He was Jewish, also a medical doctor. He was Saladin's physician and counselor, but he was also trying to merge Aristotelian thought with Judaism. And that led to the same kinds of problems that the Christians were going to have once they started reading Aristotle and trying to merge a clearly different type of philosophy with Christian dogma. So when we move on, we'll talk about Thomas Aquinas.